This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Oh my God!
Welcome, everybody, to the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 96. I'm your host, the Jock. Joining me, as always, will be the Doc. On today's episode, we're going to discuss some ventures for NXT, what might be going on with the commentary booth with AEW. Of course, we're going to take a look at AEW and Smackdown and Raw. Like I mentioned before, doing it with me, as always, he's the one, he's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
A great week of wrestling, so much news. The fall cuz is going to get here real quick. We're going to have to make some decisions as to what are we going to watch on Wednesday. Are we going to DVR AEW? Are we going to watch NXT Live? The storylines on Raw and SmackDown are heating up. We got new tag team champions. Is this a great alliance, or is this going to be the next feud? There's so much to get into. What's got your attention first, cuz?
I think for me, it had to been Sasha Banks. I'm still enraptured by Sasha Banks. When the little skit was going down, where Natalya was in the back room and she was cutting that promo, and she was telling about how, I came out last week and I was telling about how I loved my father and how he died, this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, man, it'd be great if Sasha Banks just ran up in that room and beat the living snot out of her. And sure as shit, Sasha Banks runs up in there and just melees Natalya. And Natalya is the punching bag right now. I love Sasha Banks. I love the heel character of Sasha Banks. I think it's great. I find her to be most entertaining right now. And if I'm a Becky Lynch fan, like I am, because she is my girlfriend, she needs somebody to go up against and to really stoke that fire. And I think Sasha Banks is the perfect caliber of opponent for Becky Lynch.
Did you agree to use Natty's dad in that storyline? I know you keep his name around. Some people have said, you know what, come on. There's a certain line that you have in terms of what you include in storylines. And then to have Sasha come out at that moment, I was just like, wow, they are really going there. Yeah,
it's low-hanging fruit by WWE. It's what they do. And look, the fans don't really like it. The fans don't care for it. You could tell by the reaction from the crowd. At home, when you were watching it take place last week, you were kind of like, that's probably tasteless. And, it doesn't really motivate or serve to move the story along. But all that being said, it's one of those things where it's what WWE does. It's tried and true. It's a way for them to really get hellacious heat on Sasha Banks. There's other ways you can get heat on her, but this is what WWE does. When you were watching the King of the Ring challenge, did WWE miss the boat on Cesaro yet again? Joe ends up beating Cesaro, and it seems like Cesaro is stuck in this middle area of getting a push and then getting it pulled out from underneath him. Same thing with Joe. Both of these guys, I don't really think either one of these guys should really have gone head-to-head against each other, but it seems like Cesaro has all the makings of a champion, yet WWE doesn't want to give him the run to go ahead and stake that claim.
You see, it's a tough one because at the same time, it's time for Samoa Joe. We've been saying that for a long time. And unfortunately, you just can't give everybody a spot. Look, Cesaro has a relationship with Paul Heyman. At some point, we're going to see a push, but I just don't know if we're ever going to see that push as a singles wrestler. I just think maybe they're trying to find the next guy to potentially work with him, or they're waiting for Sheamus, because as a singles competitor, I'm just not sure that Cesaro is going to ever get over.
So I think he's over. I just don't think WWE does a very good job pushing him. and Sheamus is still dealing with that spinal stenosis, and he might be done. Nobody's really sure. Did you like Rey Mysterio? Kinda semi-retiring, but it was more or less. I mean, if we're kind of wading our way through the weeds here, it was a way to put Dominic on and to help debut Dominic. So do you like Rey Mysterio feigning his retirement but showing out for Dominic?
I do. I think that, many people are talking about Dominic potentially getting in the ring, and I think that, you know what, at this point in time in Rey's career, you're trying to build emotional investment, and what better way than to tease a retirement, and then that moment, I know you were like, oh man, that's cool. He kind of said, look, I want you to be there, and things like that, so I was all for it. I thought it was written pretty well for Rey Mysterio, but some will say, should Rey Mysterio retire because is he past his prime?
See, I don't know if he should. Look, you've seen guys in wrestling just go forever and ever and ever, and Ray doesn't seem like he's had too many bumps and bruises. Looks like he takes pretty good care of himself. I mean, when he came out for the Royal Rumble, when he was announced for the Royal Rumble, last year or 2 years ago, I mean, the guy was super jacked. So, he does a couple cycles here and there, and, he leans out real nice, and he looks like he's in really good shape. But look, I don't know if he should go away. I know this is to set Dominic up. His whole thing when he came back to WWE was to help set Dominic up and get Dominic set on this path and to get him a career with WWE. And that's what it looks like it's going to happen. As far as Rey Mysterio goes, I don't know what his future holds. I don't necessarily think he should retire, but all that being said, I don't really know if you can put a belt on him or if you could really build a story around him, because you don't want a legend to just go in the tank. You don't want a legend to just kind of be somehow muttering around mediocrity and not really performing up to their capabilities or the way you remember them, because then they just kind of become a shill, and you don't want that. So I'm not sure what Rey Mysterio's future holds. Did you like the fact that WWE and Vince McMahon and Paul Heyman put the tag team championship belts on Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins?
That's such a good question, because obviously we do know they're teasing a feud, but not at the expense of the OC. See, here's the thing. I think you could have potentially planted the seeds of a feud with Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins without giving them the belt, because at the same time, what message does it send that, okay, these two guys that have been friends for a week, they can beat the OC. Now, if the OC gets the belt back and that's the impetus for the feud to kick off where they lose the belts back at a pay-per-view, I can see maybe this working, but at the same time, you're trying to build the OC, Gallows and Anderson, and to give them the belt, then rip it off of them in this manner, kind of left me going, I'm not sure that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I don't understand why you would give the belts to the OC and then a few weeks later take it away from them. I was expecting a long run. I was expecting some type of a lengthy feud with somebody else. And you didn't really get that. You didn't really get that at all. And, AJ Styles kind of intervened a little bit, and they were able to overcome that. So now, none of it really made sense to me. Honestly, it was a 3-on-2, and yet Braun and Seth still won. None of it makes sense. You totally devalue the OC. I don't like it. I don't think it's a smart move. I liked what I wanted to see the OC get a long build with the belts. And when Finn comes back, they can incorporate Finn into the OC, and somehow they have to get a championship belt. I don't know if it's from Kofi Kingston. I don't know if it's from Seth Rollins. I don't know who it's from, but they've got to get a championship belt. So then you've got a championship belt, you've got an underlying belt, and then you've got the tag belts, and you basically hold all the gold, And that's what I wanted to see. I wanted them to be the meanest, toughest faction there is. I wanted them to be WWE's version of the Bullet Club, but I don't think we're going to get that. I don't know what we're going to get. I don't like them dropping the belts. Overall, what did you think of Raw?
Raw definitely caught my attention. I thought that the storyline, the storytelling was unbelievable. I felt like, okay, you know what? Going forward, there are going to be some massive payoffs. And I think that, you know what? At this point in time, probably the number one feud in wrestling is Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch. That promo that Becky cut, bro, that was world class, bro. When she went out there and laid into Sasha saying, hey, you basically couldn't get yourself over. You just took your ball and went home. The part that was awesome was you believed it. You knew it was partly true, and it was delivered in a manner that said, oh my gosh, this match, Sasha Becky, it'll be on a pay-per-view. It'll be a main event. It'll be something that, you know what, definitely they better not ruin it by putting it on free TV. It has to main event a pay-per-view. I can't wait to see it. I might even extend it for a month or so. I can't wait to see how this plays out. But the question you got to ask is, who goes over? I think both of them need this really, really bad. So maybe that first match, you don't have a winner. Or, I don't know, man. I don't know. This is one of those feuds where both contestants need to go over equally. It's super tough.
It is. Honestly, her promo was spectacular. It was so spot on. And I think you're right. I would extend it out another month. And the first match, I wouldn't put either one of them over. It just ends in a DQ, and you get a good 15 to 20 minute match that ends in a DQ. You call it a day. You move on to the next pay-per-view, and hopefully that's at one of the big ones. Maybe that's at King of the Ring. I don't know. And you set it up for there. Honestly, it's going to really depend on how the tide's going to turn. But man, it's going to be a hell of a match because both those girls can put on a great show. All right, let's move over to SmackDown real quick. I think it's safe to say Buddy Murphy is the next biggest star in WWE. Buddy Murphy has come out the last 2 weeks, went up against Roman Reigns in a great match on SmackDown, then went up against Daniel Bryan in another great match on SmackDown. Buddy Murphy has my attention. Is it safe to say he is the next best star for WWE?
I think you got a guy that once you put him in the ring with Roman Reigns and he had that epic match, this is a guy you should push. This is a guy they're giving the ball to and they're saying, okay, show us what you got. And I think that, with the potential rumors, and I know you'll tease it probably and talk about it in the news and notes, whatever's going to happen with 205 Live, I'm not sure it ever really took off. I think a guy like Buddy Murphy, many people really didn't know and recognize his skills by what they saw. Now, he had great matches. Let's not discount the work that he did at 205 Live. The hardcore fans definitely did watch it and see. But this guy can do some things, and he'll be involved in some great feuds. And Buddy Murphy is a star, and I think someone in upper management has recognized it.
I don't know if we talked about it last week, but the whole reason Buddy Murphy sat out, when he came up from 205 Live and he sat on the sideline for a couple months, it was so he could add some size. He didn't want to go into the ring and look diminutive compared to everybody else. He wanted to be on equal footing with them. So he bulked up a little bit, added some mass, and that's why it took so long for Buddy Murphy to get onto the stage. And now that he's there, honestly, I think he is one of the most interesting guys on the television set when SmackDown's on or when Raw's on or when whatever is going on. I think he is so interesting. I think he's awesome. I think he's great to watch in the ring. Sami Zayn and Nakamura, they team up. And it appears as though Sami Zayn is the advocate for Shinsuke Nakamura. I know you like this. You love this, don't you?
I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was creative. I laughed and I said, oh, that's really, really funny because, obviously in the past and in previous podcasts, we've said, hey, some people do need some advocates. And who was prime candidate number one? Shinsuke Nakamura. So I don't know how that came about, but that's really great that Shinsuke got an advocate, man. That's awesome. That's what you want to see is that, okay, what's someone's weakness? We all know it. They acknowledge it. So what do? They add a mouthpiece. They add somebody that can talk and get some more heat and draw some attention. A hype man. And who better than Sami Zayn? I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I liked it too. I thought it was great. I thought it's a nice melding of the two. This is going to be fun to watch. We'll see what happens here, but this will be fun to watch. At the very end of Raw, or at the very end of SmackDown, I apologize, you get to find out who Roman Reigns' perpetrator is supposed to be. Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan have this jabron with a hood on, sitting on a steel chair in a broom closet. And at the very end of the show, they unveil and unmask who the guy is. And it looks like it's Eric Rowan's second cousin. It's basically who it looks like. Looks just like him. Very similar, red beard, bald head, big guy. What did you make of this segment? And is it starting to fall a little bit flat on you? The whole Roman Reigns who's the mysterious perpetrator?
Yeah, I'm more invested right now, cuz in the King of the Ring, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, there's some good matches. Who got over? The first couple matches were really solid. I'm more invested in that. This, just hasn't really caught my attention, and I'm not sure why. I want to be invested, but it's not going off in the way in which I'm like, oh yeah, I want to see it. Roman's great. I think it's an interesting, storyline, the whole whodunit type thing, but for me, it's just falling flat.
Yeah, same thing. It's just, at this point, what are we doing? And why are we still doing this? I don't understand why none of it makes sense to me. I don't like it. I was really expecting something, and then as I kind of watched the clock, I was like, we're going to get another minute of this Roman Reigns saga, and this is supposed to tide us over until next week. I was like, what is this crap? And they show you who it is, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, so not that guy. Nobody knows who that guy is. It left a bad taste in my mouth overall. What did you think of SmackDown as a whole?
SmackDown was a good show, very entertaining, quick, fast-paced 2 hours. I felt like, in terms of the show, I'm definitely invested in the King of the Ring. I'm looking forward to the show moving over to Friday nights. A lot of the storylines are great. I don't know for you, but this King of the Ring kind of feels a little bit more special than in previous years. It feels like, the field is right at the right spot. But do you feel like it lacks the big names? Like, is this the tournament that says, okay, this is basically kind of the mid-carders, and this is the guy that's going to get the next push, and this is the guy that's going to potentially move forward? Because the King of the Ring is prestigious. I like it, but I'm not sure exactly how to feel about it.
That's exactly what it screams to me. It does feel special, but it does feel like it's filled with a bunch of mid-card guys. And I think this is more of an issue with WWE. WWE, at no point did they ever want to have all their eggs in one basket. They didn't want to have all their eggs in a Stone Cold, all their eggs in a Rock. For the time, John Cena. They didn't want to have all their eggs wrapped up in those guys. So what WWE does now is they kind of put a ceiling on everybody, and if you get to this top, then you're there. You've made it. You really can't ascend any higher than that. WWE won't allow you to ascend any more than that. So you will never, ever be able to reach a level that The Rock made, or you'll never be able to reach a level that Stone Cold made, or a level that John Cena made. You will never be able to get that high. You will only be able to get as high as, say, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, maybe even Braun Strowman if you want to throw him up there. Only a few guys, Brock Lesnar. You will never be able to get any higher than this plateau. And that's what WWE does. So now what they're forced to do is they've got to go in and they've got to grab guys who really aren't doing anything. Those mid-card talents, those guys who are just kind of, all right, well, I'm waiting for creative to come up with my next storyline. Okay, cool, here, we're going to throw you in the King of the Ring. Oh, okay, cool. So it's like you and a bunch of the other mid-card guys wrestling for Booker T's crown and scepter. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of what it is. But you're right. It does feel special, but that's because it's been away for so long. As far as the talent in it, I think there's some good names. I think Samoa Joe's a name, but Samoa Joe's been booked to oblivion. Cesaro was a name who, a guy who I really feel like you could give him a little bit of a push, but what are we doing? Mustafa Ali, Buddy Murphy, these are two guys who I think have really bright futures. I don't know why they're going up against each other, but they will be going up against each other later on down the line. I don't like that because those are two young talents who really need to get over and get over on some of these other mid-card guys to really help elevate themselves up in the ranks of the King of the Ring. But it does feel special. It's just loaded with a bunch of mid-card guys, which drives me nuts. Which show did you like more?
This is a tough one. Are you willing to give maybe a tie this week?
I am. I was hoping you would go that far. When you sit down and you watch SmackDown, I think for the 2 hours it was a very consistent, concise show. It didn't really have any drop-offs. It was pretty good. I think the worst match on there was the Revival and Heavy Machinery. After that, it was all A's and B's for me. And then for Raw, I think Raw was a very eventful show. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was entertaining. I thought it was a ton of action. I thought it was awesome. So Raw trails 36.5 and a no credit to SmackDown's 58. Let's discuss AEW. So AEW is roughly a little bit more than 8 days now. 8 days out from All Out. All Out's going to take place on August 31st, 2019. What do you think is one issue AEW has to correct as All Out closes and as we move into what will now become their regular television show? What's the one thing? What's the one thing that's kind of holding them back and maybe tripping them up just a little bit?
Oh man, such a good question. There's a lot they're doing right. There's a lot that's positive.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that's positive with AEW. I'm really impressed with what they're doing.
You love their web series. I love it. Being Elite. You love the Road to All Out. You love all of those. So they do a great job with social media and they do a great job with YouTube videos.
It's yet to be determined, but I'm wondering what the production value is going to be in terms of television, how they use their cameras, how the setup is going to be. Definitely one of the things that people are talking about is how the women are going to be utilized. Now, the card is definitely stacked. The talent is there, but I feel like they've done a really decent job of pushing the Young Bucks, Shawn Spears, definitely a couple of the women, but top to bottom, the depth of the women's roster is going to be definitely fascinating to see how it plays out at the pay-per-view because they're going to have an all-women's battle royal. And I want to know who's going to be that first champion, who's going to be pushed, who's going to be elevated. So I think one of the things that they got to do is they got to elevate the women a little bit more and kind of expose us to what kind of AEW's thoughts and processes are going to be in regards to women's wrestling. It's a very fascinating look at what AEW is doing. They definitely have caught the WWE's attention, especially with the news that we're going to talk about in terms of programming on USA. AEW's doing great, man. You hear the news. They're putting out shows, and weeks 1, 2, 3, they're selling out within hours. And obviously, it's not going to last forever. But early on, when you get buzz like that, it tells everybody that, hey, everyone's interested. They want to see the matches. They're announcing it perfectly. Their tickets are getting sold, and they're doing the right thing by only going to venues that are like 5,000 to 7,000. So the show is going to be great. I just feel like AEW is right there. They're just going to, start the programming off right. And another thing, they're airing commercials on TNT during baseball. You're watching baseball. You're seeing commercials. You're seeing Chris Jericho. You're like, wow, this is exactly perfect. And cuz you know what else they did? They aired a commercial. Someone messaged me on Twitter. They aired a promo during The Rock's movie at the theaters. So they're they're taking steps to let the casual fan know, hey, there's this new thing, there's a great match going on, and there's great stuff happening on our shows and pay-per-views. So I think that AEW, for me, they just got to kind of maybe, enhance the women's division, in my eyes.
For me, I think they have to enhance the men's division. They have to come up with more names and more draws to get people in. Everybody's going to show up for Chris Jericho. Everybody's going to show up for Jon Moxley. Everybody's going to show up for Cody Rhodes, right? But does the casual fan know who MJF is? Does the casual fan know who Private Party is? Does the casual fan know who Adam Hangman Page is? Darby Allin, Joey Janela, Jimmy Havoc. Do people know who these guys are? And I think AEW will do a great job shining the spotlight on these guys. It's just one of those things where you are now going into All Out, and the ravenous wrestling fan is all in. They love it. they think it's great, right? So now you're going to be putting this on TNT in October, and the casual fan who's flipping through the channels, is he going to stop? Is he going to watch? And if he stops and watches, does he know who MJF is? Does he know who Private Party is? Does he know who Hangman Page is? Does he come back to those guys? Because Chris Jericho's a draw. Jon Moxley's a draw. Cody's a draw. These are all draws. But when you're flipping through the channels and you stop and you don't see one of those guys, you see a guy like an MJF, are you going to stay and are you going to come back? That's the question. I think AEW will do a good enough job shining a light on these guys. It's just one of those things where they've got to come out and they've got to just blow the doors off immediately, because WWE is loading up for war, and WWE is going to bring it to their front door. So you don't want to get passed up. And that's my big concern is, do they have enough guys where they have enough talent and enough of a fan base and enough of a draw to grab everybody's attention? And it's kind of that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I think they're going to deliver. They're poised. Everything's going well. It'll be interesting to see how they handle their first hiccup. Right now, everything's been positive. All the news has been great. The advertising, the way they're marketing AEW has been perfect. So far, so good for them. Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What you got?
All right, so this week's news and notes. A lot of news was made Monday afternoon and Tuesday morning. NXT will be transforming into WWE's third brand, with Vince taking a more hands-on role and hands-on approach, and more main roster guys will probably be on that broadcast when it moves to USA on September 18th. According to Triple H, everything's going to stay the same, though, so we'll see how that works out. When you're in war, Vince does not let you just kind of continue on about your way. The television program will be bumped to 2 hours. FS1 is pissed off about all of this. They thought they were in the driver's seat to get NXT. Turns out Vince decided to go with USA because Raw fans tend to draw more viewers, and WWE fans are more familiar with USA. Side note, the basement price for NXT on USA is $50 million. It could be more, but it will be no less than $50 million. Was this a mistake? Was it a mistake to put NXT on USA?
No, they're ready. I think it's absolutely perfect. Maybe the 2 hours early on might have been a little bit long, but I think you got the stars. I think potentially the thing that could be a mistake is if stars from Raw and SmackDown interweave into storylines. I don't know if people are going to buy that, especially with how the brand of NXT is portrayed. But would you be really upset if a Bobby Roode or an EC3 returned and were involved in some real storylines? I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't either.
But some of the fans might be upset.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. The thing is, it's developmental, right? So as long as you're not taking shine away from the guys from their development, I'm okay with it. With NXT moving to USA, 205 Live may be canceled. It hasn't really worked out the way Vince wanted it, so he may be panning it. We're going to have to kind of wait and see and watch what happens with 205 Live going forward. There is a report that former WCW announcer Tony Schiavone has signed with AEW and will most likely help Jim Ross and Excalibur on commentary. If you ask me, after watching Jim Ross a few times here, I think Jim Ross needs to, at this point, go to the front office, and he needs to be in charge of talent acquisition. He needs to be in charge of the boys, while Tony Schiavone should probably handle all of the commentary calls, just because Jim Ross has struggled mightily in this new era. And it sounds like Matt Hardy is thinking about taking the Broken character to AEW when his contract expires. This comes from a Twitter exchange with fans regarding the character and giving the fans the original inception of the character. And it was discussed and bantied about on whether or not he could possibly go to AEW And it sounds as though he's up for it once his contract expires with WWE. So something to watch. That's this week's news and notes.
Great podcast, sir. It's an exciting time. Want to give love to those that support us. Definitely go and check out and follow Dennis Farrell. He has the weekly Wrestling Perspective podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Dennis77Farrell. And if you've agreed or disagreed with any of our takes today here on the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast, go head on over and download the Flick Chat application. What is Flick Chat? It's a large community of Detroit sports fans, wrestling fans that love to chat in a group chat setting. It's real easy to join. All you got to do is follow us via social media, and you'll find the invite link. Join, and you're in the mix. When the new shows air, we're going to talk during AEW, NXT, Raw, SmackDown, the pay-per-views. And if you're a big fan of Detroit sports, it's the newest Detroit sports headquarters, the place to be to go and chat. So I want to show love to the sponsor of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast. Definitely go and join Flick Chat. Can't wait to talk wrestling with you, sir, next week. A good podcast. Thanks again. You just downloaded the latest edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.